Trying to get there for the lead. He'll come up short. He'll be stopped. Ajane Harris forced the issue for the Trojans. So Williams comes up short, and Utah short as well. Down a point.
Well, when you go for two and it works, everyone thinks you're a genius. When it doesn't work, not as much. Kyle Whittingham saying this about going for two: I would not have changed the decision at the end. I thought it was the right decision. I thought that was the percentage play. If I had to do it again, I'd do the same thing. Now we are lucky enough to welcome in Jordan Rogers to the show. And Jordan and Paul, but we'll start with Jordan. When you think about going for two, obviously you practice these types of plays all week long. You're ready for them. But what do you say about that moment and that decision?
I actually love it. I really do. I'm in the school of thought that if you asked any of those players or any of those coaches in a game where maybe you weren't supposed to win or whatever the odds came down to, if you had 3 yards and you had one play to win it, I think you're going to take that every time. You want to gamble on yourself, and players want to gamble on themselves. But even further than that, when you actually get into the game, that changes your thought process. And as a coach, you have to think about it. They went up early. Their defense was on the field for about 80 snaps, and they couldn't stop USC towards the end of the game. That's what you do when your defense is struggling and you have an offense that is capable and you have 3 yards to go. You make a gamble, and if you win it and you're successful, everybody thinks you're a hero, and when you don't, everybody second guesses that until the very end. But I like the play call. They moved the pocket, gave their quarterback a chance to throw and run. It just didn't come out the way they wanted.
Well, it's still a 33% probability, and the only thing I would argue about that is that in overtime, all it takes is one bad play, and you can possibly win. You're rolling the dice either way. I think if you have some momentum, go for it. It's obviously you made the wrong decision since it didn't work.
Yeah, I think it's the defense. You think about your defense out there, right? They haven't been able to stop anybody. Now you back them up to the 25, and you're relying on them again. So it's all a momentum thing. You're never going to be right if you don't come out on the right side of it.
We're like Tuesday afternoon quarterbacks.
Totally.
I think it's Tuesday. I'm not really sure.
It is.
Okay, who is the number 2 team in the country?
This is a tough one, Laura. You're putting me in between the team I just broadcast this last week in Georgia, an SEC team, and we are the SEC network, and my former head coach, James Franklin, at Penn State right now. You're putting me in a tough spot. As it sits right now, I really do like Georgia because I believe their defense from a run standpoint, their run-stopping defense is one of the best in the entire country. If you can stop the run, you can win games. And then I think we have just seen the tip of the iceberg of how good this offense can be. And they are so deep at running back. Everybody talks about Nick Chubb, Sony Michel. Well, it keeps going down the list. DeAndre Swift may be one of the best on that roster come 3 years from now. You got Brian Harrigan. You got Elijah Holyfield. They got 5 guys that would start at a lot of other schools, let alone you have a young quarterback in Jake Fromm that is getting better and better and better. And we saw him this last week explode on the scene for over 300 yards passing. They're going to need him down the stretch. As talented as Penn State is right now with Saquon Barkley, I think at this moment I like the depth of Georgia and the fact that they have a lot and really their best football ahead of them.
I think it's really an easy decision. To me, Georgia has played significantly better than almost anyone but Alabama. Penn State is very good, but I think Georgia is a more complete team, Laura, and I would have voted them this week. Not that anybody asked me.
Hey, we're agreeing this week. Look at this.
Alabama and Georgia, yes.
Yeah, no one asked you to vote Paul. They might ask Jordan, but they didn't ask you. Okay, so let's check this out. Here's some information on these 3 teams that we are discussing here: Alabama, Georgia, and Penn State, I believe. Oh, no, wait. Actually, TCU's on there. Alabama. I don't know why I'm talking about Alabama. But as you see, they can state their case. And we haven't discussed TCU just yet, guys, but they're still in this conversation. So, Jordan, when you think about TCU and really what could happen for them in the Big 12, they've got some big games coming up. Of course, they do face Oklahoma. But what's your thought on TCU right now?
Well, the Big 12 is interesting, obviously, with the fact that it's going to come down to playing each other at the end of the year. It's up for anybody. If you can score points in that league, you can win games, and that's going to bode well. It's really going to come down to how that defense fares, the attrition towards the end of the season, be able to win these ones that you should to close out the season. But adversity changes teams, and I just don't know if I've seen enough yet from that entire football team for 4 quarters that tells me that they're better than a Georgia or a Penn State right now.
As far as the Big 12, you were hesitant on that, Jordan. Who would you guess right now to come out of the Big 12?
I mean, I really like Baker Mayfield, and that may be going with my heart a little bit. I think he's a playmaker. I think more than that, he's got something to him that raises the standard or the play of his teammates around him, and it's hard for me to bet against that right now.
Okay, so we're talking about the Big 12. And by the way, really fast, there was a great point by Heather Dinich in just potential college football playoff chaos where she said, there is a scenario where TCU could be ranked third and then drop to 5 after the Big 12 championship game. Which, I mean, you said when that happened, we would never see it again. There could be a case where we would see it again. For TCU's sake and Gary Patterson, I like him. I hope that doesn't happen. Let's talk about the Pac-12, though, guys, because, Jordan, the Pac-12 seems to have, especially with this wacky Friday the 13th craziness, maybe have factored themselves out of the college football playoffs.
Yeah, the craziness. For a while, it looked like Washington could eventually just kind of roll through this, and we could be looking at an Apple Cup showdown of 2 undefeated teams, kind of leaving USC and Stanford out of the picture, and now all of a sudden, it's a little bit of craziness. And right now, I think USC has the best chance to be a playoff team. I like what I see out of them being able to finish games. They're up and down like a roller coaster at times, but they have a good win against Stanford, a good non-conference schedule. They still got to play Notre Dame, which is going to be an interesting one. But right now, that one-loss team in the Pac-12 that we're talking about, I think, should be USC.
Yeah, but Jordan, I would also add, I think there's a reasonable chance they're going to get left out, too, because if SC can't get past Notre Dame, they really don't have much hope. And I think Washington shot itself completely out of it the other day.
Like the whole state of Washington, right?
Well, I had already given up on Mike Leach after the loss.
Mike Leach is so much fun. Okay, so we talked about USC. You mentioned Notre Dame, guys. What do we think about Notre Dame?
They're playing really, really well right now. Obviously, the only mark on their schedule right now is that game against Georgia, who is one of the top teams in the country. Anytime your schedule looks like that and you have a very close loss to eventually probably a team that's going to be up there in the top 4 or 5 for the rest of the season, if they can stay the course and win out, I mean, that schedule is second to almost none. Yeah,
I think on Notre Dame, in some ways, they control their own destiny, Laura and Jordan, because big wins. If they get a big win Saturday against SC, they're not done yet. But if they only have a loss to Georgia, they could knock Georgia out if Georgia loses to Alabama.
Whew.
That'd be one of those things. And I sat in that mock college football playoff committee. What they go through is unbelievable. So that's one of those things. Well, I mean, you go the heads-up matchup. You go strength of schedule. I mean, it's so intricate. We could have a crazy finish.
My favorite
with
scenario,
1 or 2 lost
I think
teams.
I saw Jordan and Laura, is Auburn beating Alabama in the final game of the season, then Alabama, and having lost another game somewhere, then Alabama beats Georgia and kicks Auburn out.
Yeah. It makes you sit there and just go, pew. Your whole brain explodes.
Makes you wonder why we only have 4 teams in the playoff, is what it makes me do.
Oh, Paul, not time for the expansion talk right this second, but I see what you're doing there. Thanks so much, Jordan. We'll check back in with you soon. And when we come back, we have Kirk Herbstreit joining us. We'll continue this playoff talk, plus a little bit of Heisman talk as well. Woohoo. More excitement from you. Come on.
All day. Paul Barkley don't come around very often. He's the best football player I've ever seen. He's blessed with unbelievable talent. I want to go down as one of the best running backs to ever play at Penn State.
How do you tackle a guy that can squat 650 pounds? Barkley, here he goes. Save, gone!
His ability to burst, his ability to accelerate, his ability to catch out of the backfield.
Wow, he is so electric. Now you see me, now you don't. As dope. Well, let's see, he runs it, he catches it, he returns it, and he passes it. He is the complete package.
Every single part of my game, with the vision, breaking tackles, when I want a safety, make that guy miss, and wherever I got to do to get in the end zone, do whatever it takes to win games.
He is Saquon Barkley, basically the human highlight reel that he is.
And these are the numbers on Saquon Barkley, just pretty extraordinary when you think about what he's done, running, catching, returning. He's done it all. One reason why he is the Heisman Trophy favorite going into Saturday night. And Kirk Herbstreit joining us. And Kirk, we were before we get to Saquon, and I do want to do that very quickly. Take us back to game day on Saturday. The Corso headgear, but that's not really what I'm interested in. It looks like you're trying out as a dog walker for the Westminster
Bulldog Wrangler
dog show in New York. You saved this dog from extinction. What happened? Well, the trainer told me to hold the collar really tight. So I was like, okay, that'll make him sit. Well, as I was holding it, he started to back off, and I'm thinking, if I hold this collar and he backs off, what is he going to hang himself? Like, what do I do here? So I'm trying to hold the chain and also like not let him fall off, and that headgear spooked him completely. So yeah, I was doing my best to try to keep him on the set.
Well, so Kurt, we're looking at the video right now, and there's this just mysterious hand that comes into the picture that just pushes the butt of the bulldog back on. Like, who is that person?
That was the trainer. That's his dog. So yeah, he and I was looking at him before you could see me, and Corso was on a single. I was looking over at him like, what do I do here? The dog's about to fall off. Meanwhile, I've got him by the collar, and I'm thinking he's going to fall. Everyone's cheering for Corso, and I'm going to be sitting here holding a bulldog, by the collar, and he's going to be hanging off the end.
I actually thought the dog was doing something else first, but before they stopped him.
No.
Oh, Paul. Golly.
No. Okay. No, and I'm a dog guy.
Of course.
I've got 3 dogs, but I didn't know what to do. He was trying to get his claws to try to give him traction, and obviously the hard set. He was pushing himself right off the back of the set.
Well,
so
you've got a future as a dog whisperer. Let's get to Saturday night and talk about Saquon Barkley and this pretty amazing run that he's had, and the game obviously between Penn State and Michigan.
That'll be a great game. Penn State, think about everything that program has been through. And now to be able to have a team that's ranked all the way up at number 2 this week. I know their fans are excited. Game day's going to be there. ABC Saturday night. Really a football team that has earned it. Last year with the way they finished the year, they got to the Rose Bowl, ended up coming up a little bit short. But most of that team is back this year. Saquon Barkley doing things that you just rarely see a running back do. But they're a lot more than Saquon Barkley. They're playing great defense. The quarterback, Trace McSorley, has a ton of weapons, and they're really tough to beat in State College. And, I'm talking a lot about Penn State, but, man, this Michigan team, I know they haven't looked great offensively the last couple weeks, but when Jim Harbaugh is backed into a corner and not given a whole lot, much of a chance to win a game, he typically comes in with a few wrinkles and a few tricks up in his bag of trickery, the plays that he'll come up with. So it would not surprise me at all to see Michigan be very competitive in this game. But the atmosphere will be tough for them to try to deal with and overcome offensively.
Yeah, it's just a tough stretch for Penn State, Kirk, over these next few weeks. And, we were talking about that just now. They also have to go to Ohio State. When you look at the Big Ten and what could happen, and Paul and I have talked a lot about Ohio State's potential path to the playoff once again. What are your thoughts on the Buckeyes?
Well, the Buckeyes have done everything that's been asked of them since they lost that night to Oklahoma. You can talk about it's been inferior opponents, but the way they have looked against those teams has been incredible. Everybody wanted to maybe bench J.T. Barrett, or a lot of people, the fans, media, talked about benching J.T. Barrett after the Oklahoma game. And have you seen him play since that game? Again, everything I think, no one is really looking at Ohio State yet as a real threat until they play Penn State after their bye week. They get a chance to recover this week and get healthy while Penn State is, as you're saying, Laura, is playing Michigan. It is a tough grind for them, and there's still Michigan State. If they survive those 2 weeks, Michigan State is still hanging out there as well. So whoever survives the Big Ten East will have earned it, and then they'll have to go and still play Wisconsin, more than likely, in Indianapolis in a Big Ten championship game. So the winner of that game in Indy will clearly be one of the teams in the playoff.
Kirk, you mentioned Wisconsin, but no one else seems to be remembering that they're still alive. Your impressions of the Badgers?
Well, it's been kind of typical Paul Chryst and typical Wisconsin running the football. Their quarterback Alex Hornibrook does a nice job of trying to take care of the ball. The last couple of weeks he's had some turnovers, but it's Jonathan Taylor, offensive line, play action pass. It's not sexy. They're not going to score 60 a game. It's not a spread offense where you see 4 and 5 receivers in formations. It's kind of old school, but they play great defense so far this year, and just a team that kind of plays up that
disrespect card. So while everybody else wants to talk about Ohio State, Penn State, Michigan, even Michigan State, you're exactly right, Paul. It's as if Wisconsin, for a lot of people, they're just over there in the Big Ten West, minding their own business, being forgotten about, and they'll have an opportunity more than likely, as I say, in that Big Ten championship. If they do what they're supposed to do, very good chance they show up 60 minutes away from having a chance to get to the playoff.
As we talk about potential college football playoff chaos, there's one team that seems to have the most clear path to the playoff. That's Alabama as of right now. Now, Kirk just saw Alabama and their dominance. They've done a lot of it with the run game. It seems like the question of, is the run game even better than the defense at this point, is a valid one to ask. But a lot of what they've done has been because they've been dominant in the trenches, owning the line of scrimmage. And here you see, 923 Alabama rush yards before contact. It's incredible. They've also only allowed 28. So, Kirk, after seeing them up close and in person, what are your impressions of Alabama's dominance and how that factors into the college football playoff conversation?
Laura, I had them week 1 against Florida State, and it's a new year. They lost a lot of leadership from the previous team. Obviously, incredibly talented team. But to see where they are now, remember, everybody talked about the Andre Francois injury in that game and what it did to Florida State. But if you've watched Alabama and you're an Alabama fan, they sustained some big loss themselves. And I think now they're finally getting healthy defensively. And you can really tell by the way they're playing. And not only that, guys like Mack Wilson had to fill in while Rashaan Evans, for example, was trying to recover from his groin injury. And now that they're both playing together, it makes that defense so much more difficult to deal with. And their third down defense is just as dangerous as it's ever been. So what I've seen from Alabama is they've faced some adversity because of the injuries, not to mention, think of the losses on that defensive line, the linebackers from a year ago, those outside linebacker guys. And now that these guys have been able to get through 6 or 7 games, gaining experience, to me, they're defensively, not even talking about the offense, defensively, finally starting to get in a groove and kind of get into that midseason form as they get ready for the stretch run and ultimately get to Atlanta and the SEC championship game. And it's funny to me about Jalen Hurts. This guy can run and throw. Everybody wanted to put the other kid in, and Laura, you and I were there with Joey and Tess, and there was so much talk about him maybe replacing Jalen Hurts. And Jalen Hurts, meanwhile, just continues to go out, execute, run, throw, make great decisions, and I think he's having a great year himself.
Kirk, always great to catch up with you. We will see you this weekend, and thank you so much for joining us.
Yes, sir. Look forward to it. Keep those calls coming. Always love listening to them.
Thank you.
Kirk's a big fan of the calls. He loves it. It's great stuff. And by the way, Tua Tagovailoa for Alabama is...
Can you give a tutorial on how to pronounce that?
Yeah, it is Tagovailoa. Okay? Remember the name, because he will be important at some point for Alabama. And by the way, he has been able to get some valuable playing time this year. We've seen him come into games in mop-up duty. But he would be starting for any other team. That doesn't mean he should be starting over Jalen Hurts, who once again could be the MVP of the SEC offensively.
We've had coaches tell both of us, as crazy as it sounds, they actually think he's the better quarterback, but he can't win the starting job because of what Jalen does.
And, Paul, in this day and age, especially in the SEC, but I think this applies in every conference, you are in a better situation if you have a dual-threat quarterback, a legitimate dual-threat quarterback, and that is Jalen Hurts. Say whatever you want about the passing, and maybe he needs to throw the ball downfield more. I don't care about that. He can make the throws when he needs to make the throws, and he's shown that. He can also run it with the best of them, if not better than the best of them.
And Laura, with Clemson's loss, I think Alabama has just drawn a line in the sand, and they are stand above the best team in the country.
Yeah.
And I don't see one that's comparable right now.
Well, and it's not just Clemson's loss to Syracuse, but it's the questions of Kelly Bryant's health. Because if he's not truly healthy, they are not the team that they can be anyway.
But until last Friday night, there were a lot of people who were insistent that Clemson was better. Some of it maybe a hangover from last year. I never saw it, and I think the loss has ended that, and you're right. They have serious problems if they can't get him healthy.
More thoughts from us when we come back. Oh, I guess I should keep talking. Well, we have more coming up on the show. This is some great video.
You can be quiet now.
You be quiet.
New lasted the next day. New lasted...
The Finebaum Show, starring, well, I guess you know who it stars. That will
Paul.
be coming up shortly on the SEC Network, beginning at 3 p.m. That's like 1 minute and 8 seconds from now.
I'm glad you can do math because I can't. Oh, wow, Paul, earlier in the show we had Jalen Hurts on. He told you that you might want some of his hair. Well, there you have it. What do you think about that?
I like that look.
I think it's really cute on you. By the way, shout out to the graphics team. Whoever did that, shout out, because that's some excellent work by you. Katie, I'm being told, did that.
Katie.
Good job, Katie.
Katie.
It fits perfectly on your head. Truly, Paul, I think we need to revamp your look. Let's look into this.
We'll start next time you're back, and we'll just with the hair. Back to Jalen. I mean, how difficult must be to negotiate that type of hair?
Well, I think it works out just fine for him. Like, he's able to be one of the best players in the country with that hair.
Really.
So you got to put it in a ponytail.
You got to try that.
Okay, whatever. I'm not doing that.